All right, good evening. This is a conversation with Sylver tonight, and I am so excited, Sylver, to be with you. So honored.
Mm.
So everyone who's listening now, I just want to introduce this amazing woman and just say that Sylver actually is right across the river from where I live in Missouri right now. And I met Sylver about 4 years ago when I'd first moved back to Missouri. And Sylver, you probably remember this because when we met, I was just saying to you, I have no idea how did I land back in Missouri. You know, I'd been living in New Mexico and out west, and of course I love the mountains out there, the sacred land. And I've always loved Missouri, but there was a part of me that was like, wow, is this, how long am I going to be here? Do I fit here? I'm this astrologer and this, I'd been cultivating my star being self, and I met Sylvia, and Sylvia, were, what did you say? I'm trying to recall what you said to me, but in those moments, Sylvia, when I first met you, Sylvia embodies an earth sky woman. She is at once a profoundly visionary woman and also deeply rooted into the earth. And, Sylvia, you lived also, I mean, you spent a lot of time out west and you
Yes.
kind of landed here. You want to talk a little bit about, just a little more about who you are and how you came to be here in Missouri, and a little bit about your background so that everyone can know just a little more about who you are.
I'd be honored to, and thank you, Tammy. This is quite a moment for the River Sisters, right?
Yes.
Yes. So we share, just as a little, for those of you tuning in and listening, Tammy and I share the Missouri River between us, which for some of us who know the old ways, that's the Turtle Islands, one of our Crescent Niles. So it's a really beautiful place to be in this moment, but all moments, like when I met Ms. Tammy for the first time. So in regards to how I've come to be in Missouri, I was really led back here, like Tammy and many of you out there. We've been gypsies. We've gone where we've been moved to get called to go. For many of those of us were called to mountains and big skies and plains and very unique landscapes. Maybe even saying the wilder and the fewer people, the better. That was definitely for me as a young adult. That's what called me, was to be in places that I could learn from the earth. And a big part of that comes because of the way I was raised, quite frankly. In the late 60s, my parents decided that this world was never going to survive making it in what they called the straight at that time, right? It was a straight way, the man's way, because my parents were very educated and deeply committed to social justice. And started because of where they'd moved to, like Colorado specifically was where my father first left the East Coast. So we lived in Colorado, and that was, as he became more and more in contact with the land, he wanted less and less to do with the, what was being called civilization, and the terms back then were, it was that back to the land movement, which probably rings bells for some of the listeners. And within that context, he completely pulled us out as much as possible from the mainstream culture. And for many of those years, no one worked within the man system. We were truly homesteading. We were truly growing our own food. I mean, we worked all the time, but there were definitely, we made our way. My mom made clothes that she sold at fairs and jewelry, and my father worked his own sawmill and worked horses and milked cows. So I mean, I used to laugh because even through very unusual childhood of, but we lived in Colorado, Minnesota, 4 different places in Missouri, all in the quest to find the perfect homesteading situation, right? Moving away from oil, working the land with horses, surrounding ourselves with old timers. And within that, those ways, we spent a lot of time in northern Minnesota near the, near my uncle taught art on a reservation up north. And so we, within that, those early years, became deeply involved in some of the Red Road ways and being invited into ceremony and doing crazy things like, you know, sewing our own teepees and then living in them all summer long, right? And surviving tornadoes and like, I mean, we were just in it because my parents were convinced that the way, the greed and the destruction of the earth was just going to lead to death. And so now at this particular moment, we're getting to laugh and tell him he was just 50 years ahead of his time.
Right, right. Wow. Yeah, Sylvia.
Right? But what happened within that construct is because I lived with no running water, no electricity, no TV, no, you know, and we didn't get a TV till I was a junior in high school. I graduated from high school in '87. I mean, it was just a complete, I was immersed in a completely different paradigm when I was home than what all of my peers were doing, right? I don't know any of the, I really don't know the old TV shows. I mean, we were just playing music and growing food and like this completely other way. But honestly, what I learned from that was not only what it means and how we are so much of the earth, but also how you cannot hide, you can't deny the mainstream paradigm either, right? It's not possible to be completely self-reliant. None of us are ever completely self-reliant. I saw a lot of young children, you know, my peers that never went to public school have really, really hard times. They didn't know how to be well adjusted within the mainstream culture. For all of the strengths that I learned, we also had a lot of really hard lessons, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I came to be in terms of my understanding of how important Earth is. The recognition that we are Earth was because of how we lived in the old ways. And so I would say things like, well, I have more in common with Laura Ingalls Wilder than my peers, you know, because I was going home after playing basketball and being in, you know, I graduated in high school in '85 and I'm literally going home to milk a cow.
Right. Oh my gosh. Sylvia.
So, I mean, and then between really a big part of it then within when we lived in Minnesota and then we came south, my family had a dear friend, my stepmom in particular, who married a Mandan Hidatsa pipe carrier. And it was, I mean, that was it. That's where that was how I then had a framework of understanding what I felt from living on the earth. There was a spiritual framework to put a language to it and to put a belief system to it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. And I just want to say too, it makes so much sense in you really sharing more of your whole story, why we connected, because I had not as extreme of an experience. My parents were Christian back to the Landers, but that same thing where I don't know any of the same TV shows. I didn't fit in. I was homeschooled, you know, we grew our own food. I was milking the goats, you know, the same thing. So, you know, and I think we're both really privileged, and we're really, really privileged to have had that experience. And
absolutely.
And I want to just say too, just to give a little bit more background around what Sylvia, what inspires me so much about who you are now as well, is that, again, when I first met you a few years ago, it's when Sylvia and her husband had just taken over this historic building in this little river town of Hartsburg, Missouri, and had just done a beautiful job of fixing up this building and creating kind of a community space. And just recently, you just donated that to the Missouri Organic Growers Association, right?
Yes, Mid-America or Mid-Missouri Organic
Yeah.
Association, MOA.
Yeah. So, and just seeing, and then you've got about 300 acres down there, right, near where you live,
Yeah.
that you're managing and taking care of. And
Mhm.
so, part of what I learned from you, Sylvia, was about just how it is that we take care of what's, in our own backyard and how we offer that to the community. And the other piece, though, that really, really got me in terms of just really hitting my heart was that when we first met, I was missing the sacred landscapes of New Mexico because I love the wide open sky. I love living in land where there's still a lot of indigenous presence, and I'd worked a lot with Native communities there like you. And so when I first came back and I met you, you said, this is Heart City, it's Hartsburg. This is the heart of the Midwest. This is sacred land as well. You told me about how this beautiful creek that I love so much near here was considered by some Cherokee to be the heart of the dove, and a place where Christ consciousness was born, or, so you helped me understand to the sacred dimension of where I had grown up in this land that I had circled back to, and something I'd always sensed and felt, but didn't have words for. And so I think part of why I really wanted also to have you on, and there's so much I want you to talk about, is because I just feel like for so many people, there's that story of how do we circle back around to what's essential? How do we come back to the land? And how do we see the land where we actually live as being sacred? And how do we see ourselves as being, in a way, at the center of our own universe, and seeing the land where we live as being the heart of that, of the land, of what's important, and bring that love and that care and that kind of that more traditional perspective to it. So
Right.
I just wanted to reference that. I just wanted to honor that in terms of a deeper understanding of what really inspires me and struck me about meeting you and seeing the way you walk your talk. So I wanted to reference that, but also I just wanted to say that in our last conversation, and every conversation we have, I'm really struck by many of the things that you say. But you had said something like you'd been speaking to an Indigenous elder recently, and you and I were talking about the urgency of these times. We just feel, this was a few months ago, we had reconnected. And you said this elder had said something really striking to you, like, school is over. It's time to get real.
Yeah.
And now here we are sitting here, this pandemic has just begun. I just want to get a sense from you, Sylvia, how are you feeling about that whole concept now and where we're at?
So in terms of honoring where that came from, that was a woman that some of the listeners may know, grandmother Sylver Star, and then the woman that had told her, in terms of a context, that was being shared in the late 80s, early 90s, in regards to, some of people are familiar with when they say the Aquarius rising or the divine feminine began emerging. There was an elder from the Southwest actually named Windrider. And I apologize, I don't remember which tribe she or what her heritage was completely, but her name was Grandmother Windrider. And she taught that to Grandmother Sylver Star, and that was in the context of the early 90s. So a while ago, in other words, right? But I got those teachings about the early 90s, and that's been part of my, from living on the earth and feeling her pain, quite frankly, because I live with her and the animals, and they do speak, and there's so much tears and crying and grief, right? So that has felt like, no, school is over here, folks. We cannot take our Earth Mother for granted, right? Like, it's not, we've been given warnings, we have our stories, we have so many resources. And I heard an elder say, this was a couple years ago, like through an interview, I don't know the name, but Humans are the only species that don't know why we're here.
Mm.
Okay, so that's a powerful statement there, right? How like we are the only species that don't know why we're here. I feel like these times are calling for figuring out why we
Mm.
are really
Mm.
here.
Awesome.
And it is to grow gardens and to steward ourselves and to steward each other and to you know, if we come together through life, through the gardens, and that can be either metaphoric gardens for those that don't have an actual garden, but as you mentioned with our giveaway to MOA, right? Like we can continue, which feels like death and fear and greed and all these human things that keep us really distracted from why we're here, or we can turn our backs on something that isn't working for the majority of the two-leggeds and embrace light and sunshine and become what you've called the summit, which is earth, sky, women, but it's really, you know, it's earth, sky, humans,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I love that because anyone who's familiar with at least some of our ways of the plains people, you know, we were told we were taught hard. We are hollow bones,
Mm-hmm.
period. Our bones we are here in our robes to channel in creator and channel up earth mother, right? So Tangashala would be what we were taught, and Unchi, mother earth, father sky. We are channels. That's why you do your best to eat right, sleep right, you know, like take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if I directly answered your question, Tammy.
You did, and I think that also it's this moment we find ourselves in right now, and that's part of what strikes me. You know, that when we last talked, I think, you know,
Only
you
in
felt
February,
something, we felt
right?
something, we both felt something. You were going through a lot of personal, kind of your own big reckoning with your own family. And we
Yes.
both felt something, and now here we are, and here's this pandemic. You know, what's
Yes.
your feeling around that?
So my feeling with our pandemic is this virus has a spirit, and if we can recognize that it is alive, it has a spirit, it's a hard teacher. We have a choice then as two-leggeds trying to figure out how to work with this, right? And just for clarifications for listeners, two-leggeds meaning humans. Are we going, you know, it is alive, it is going to feed on fear, it's hungry, it's looking for weakness, it's looking for hosts, literally, right? So how are we going to greet it with our own lives, right? Like, how are we going to respond to it? Are we going to love it for what the hard lessons it's going to teach us? Are we going to learn to respect it and the hard lessons that it's here to teach us? I haven't talked a lot about this. I think it's really important. Anytime you're in crisis, we're in a crisis, right? And so the worst thing that we can do is to panic and be in fear. The most important thing we can do is to stay calm and learn to breathe and acknowledge that the crisis is upon us, but that we don't have to fear this. This is something, in many ways, many of the indigenous talk to us about illness and sickness is a form of spiritual initiation if we choose to do that work with this, that, you know, what our bodies are challenged with. And we know that we're being told that if we can understand that it is a teacher and we can learn, again, going back to respecting it, paying attention to what it's teaching us, and working on relationship specifically with water, but all the elements that keep us alive, earth, air, water, and fire, right? And we've forgotten that. And that goes back to what you were talking about, Tammy, about how do you make wherever you are home and sacred, right? Like, well, it's not the same as the mountains. I want to be in the mountains or the ocean, but really what being a conscious being, understanding what we're here to do, you know, with our work, we can start with just being in appreciation that we are earth and water and fire and air, and start with gratitude. Wherever we are is sacred earth. There is nowhere on this earth that isn't sacred earth. The fact that it's covered with cement, roads, snake lines, you know, the oil, nowhere is not sacred. That's the whole point, right? Like, anywhere, you know, we are in a body and we get to be walking on our mother. That anything we're touching in terms of physicalness is sacred. And I really feel like this pandemic has us in a timeout and an opportunity. If we choose to rise in love, we can reconnect our energetic lines and our energetic ourselves, our communities, our family into old knowledge for new times, right? Like that, we have the knowledge. It wasn't that long ago that no matter where you lived on the earth, we understood we were a part of earth. We're not separate. No. I think that it may be, for me, one of the most powerful things that this pandemic is teaching us. Like, we have to have water. And what do you do when you can't get, you know, like there's all these systems that may truly be breaking down, and some places are breaking down. So guess what? We get to see these things and help each other. You know, going back to what I learned, you can't go out, and you may have learned this in your family too, in your beautiful big homestead and Christian family, Tammy. We probably, that's why we resonate. We learn so much about it's not possible to isolate yourself from the world and take care of yourself, right?
No.
I mean, that does not work. So we have become the loneliest people in the world. What they're calling civilization and modern, why does that equate with loneliness? And why do we call civilization these systems that destroy everything? I mean, it's backwards.
It's backwards,
It's backwards. There's a beautiful Chilean economist, and I apologize, I forget his name. He's called the Barefoot Economist. Look him up. And I heard him talk in an interview, and he said that the economists have always defined reality. Throughout the history of humans, that economists were the ones within even tribal times that determined what our time and labor and effort were, what we exchanged that for, was beads or, you know, what they put, they're the ones, no matter what we call them in different languages, but the economists were the ones that determined what our time and our energy and our life force efforts, how we created those systems of exchange, right? as an economist, he has no problem with that because that's important. But what we have done in this modern paradigm is we have it totally backwards. We have defined the earth as a resource. We have to define our Earth Mother as the source and put all of our economic systems and focuses into that recognition, period. And we can fly in the sky and all these, when you look at what our modern technology has created, this isn't a question of that we can't do it. It's a question that we won't do it. We're not doing it. We're behaving like, spoiled little kids, really, in so many ways, right? So this pandemic is giving us an opportunity to step back from the day-to-day capitalistic model, which is, taking over and doing its thing, eating up Mama Earth, eating up our bodies, eating, right? Feeding, very similar to the pandemic. Now we have an extremely exciting opportunity to say, you know what? You're telling us we can't work.
Right. Can't work.
You can't work, you can't socialize, you can't. Well, maybe we could be thinking about what we can. We can come together and grow our own food. Wherever you are, you can find those gardens. You can find rural gardens. You can find, community gardens. You can find farmers. I mean, and something that's really important for us to realize here as participants and being spiritual beings is that where we put our money determines what reality is. If we don't like reality, then start putting our money somewhere else. If our shipping systems are breaking down, one of the things that we know is that it's not the farmers or the doctors or the nurses or the teachers or all the boots on the ground making the money of this mainstream paradigm, right?
Right.
Why can't we change what we're focused on?
Yeah,
Why
there's no reason.
I mean, they're telling us we not only can we not go back to work, our jobs might not be there.
Yeah.
Okay. The jobs that had us completely out of balance, that we couldn't, no matter how many we had, for many of us, 3, 4, especially our dark-skinned brothers and sisters, our indigenous people, how much harder can we work for the man? It's like this huge company store, right, around the globe. You guys remember miners working for the company store, sharecropping. There's all sorts of language here. And in the capitalistic model, which is kind of taking over the whole globe, right? We are earth. So we are resource. So we are here to be used up, thrown away, and moved on. That's it. Are we going to continue to do that? Are we going to embrace what we're here to do, which is to garden this mother, to take care of her, to take care of ourselves, to take care of our water, and to get to know our neighbors, like what's going on now? I mean, we're like seeing people that we've never seen before because they were always off working. So we can't, right? I mean, the things that are happening aren't easy. And I want to send a prayer out for the people who aren't in safe spaces, right? There's some heavy duty, powerful stuff going on right now. And I don't mean to make light of it, but again, that's why we have to turn into each other. And I think in these questions that we ask ourselves, why am I here? What am I here to do? What do I do now? What we can do now is what you're calling forth in the summit, Tammy. We can become earth sky women, earth sky people. We can get our bootstraps on and we can say, I don't have all the answers, but I have a piece here that I can bring. I can grow plants. I can find, Thomas Jefferson, lots of issues with him, but he did have an amazing quote that says, he who controls his food controls his life. So of course, Now we would say they who control their food control their lives. This is a beautiful moment to knock the middleman out, or the middleman system,
Mm-hmm.
and get the
Yep.
people connected to the earth, connected to each other, buying their food, buying their, helping each other with food. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know how they're going to get a lot of our food to people and animals in through the regular systems.
Yeah.
But we can do that for each other. It doesn't mean we all go and grow a garden. What it means is that we tune in to our food, because food is medicine, food is life, food is sacred, food is earth. And if we are earth, in order to continue, we have to pull it back in. Old knowledge. What were the old timers doing this time of year? It's spring.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're already thinking winter. What
Mm-hmm.
happens when those food systems, if they break down? What happens when the migrant workers? So all these questions that we have through this pandemic that can easily raise fear,
Mm-hmm.
don't go there. Acknowledge it, and then let your old DNA that each of us have, every
Yeah.
single one of us has ancestors not that long ago that were living with the earth and doing food.
Yeah.
I've heard a
Mm-hmm.
dear friend say she called her 97-year-old grandmother. We use our community spaces. I know specifically one of the things that MOA is doing, the people who now own these buildings, we are going to work to create how gardening is one of the safest things we can do together.
Yeah. Yeah. Little pandemic
And
victory gardens.
yes, and that's a
Yeah.
real thing. New York
It is.
Times
It
had
is.
something about
Yeah.
it. There's victory gardens
Mm-hmm.
going on all over. There's urban agricultures. This is real. This is right
Yeah.
now. We can rise together. We can face the sun. We can be love, we can be the change we wish for the world, and it isn't going to be easy, but neither is the system we're in now. It's like, at least if we're going to have to work ourselves this hard, we're working in a way that makes sense and is true to why we have these bodies and here for Creator.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. And so I love that everything that you're saying, and just really empowering ourselves to grow our own food and to reconnect to the earth. And as you're saying that, and supporting the food systems we already have in place, using our money in that way, supporting the local
Yes,
farmers
yes,
markets. We are
huge.
lucky to have a farmers market here still. And if you live in a little apartment and you don't have much land, yeah, to like support the farmers markets, but you can also you can do a worm bin. It's so
Yes,
easy now to go online, learn how to make your own
yes,
worm bin, learn how
yes,
to do container gardening, learn how to do a little.
yes.
When I lived in New Mexico, we had a square foot garden in our little patio. We grew a lot of food, so
It's,
it's,
yes,
I hear you. It's in our DNA. We know these things. Some would say that our our civilized selves are like 3 days old. That's how deep they are. If you take somebody for 3 days and take them out of modern culture, they're going to figure things out in about 3 days. They're going to remember how to connect to the sky. They're going to my sense is that we are longing to reconnect with each other
yes,
on earth. It's so deep in
yes,
us that once
yes.
you give people a taste for what it is they've been too distracted to experience, they're not going to want to go back.
No. And so here's these may be a little dated. 40% of the American adult population are on pharmaceutical drugs.
Wow.
Why are we getting so sick? We're getting so sick because we're not eating the right food and we're not outside. We are being told we aren't a part of our earth sky system.
Yep.
And it's killing us,
Yep.
literally.
Yeah.
So even, not only can you, if nothing else, I think one of my deep commitment here is that you can doubt a lot of things in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do to understand that you are on sacred earth and that you are sacred and what you are here to do is maybe not real clear, but that to understand you're loved and cared for. Those old knowledges, again, you get up with the sun, and you go outside and you give gratitude, even if it's a window being open and you can't see the sun, you know,
Yeah.
use your technology, pull a sun up on that screen and feel it on your face. I mean, there's so many creative ways to get tuned in with what keeps us alive: earth, water, air, and fire, right? So you start the great day in gratitude. You end the day in gratitude, looking down and being humble, right? You start it with the sunshine coming on you, and you feel it every time you wash your dishes, every time you use water, every time you have enough, you know, to eat or put on your boots. That's earth taking care of you. That's our mother taking care of you. If you were intimidated by, I don't know how to grow anything, that's okay. You know, get on, watch some great movies about what people used to do. Listen to some incredible songs, you know, just make peace with that. It can be a really, really quickening of going, I am earth fighting, because I recognize that I need water, air, fire, and water, right, to exist. That can happen really quick. And I hope for some of the listeners that hasn't happened for yet, like, just embrace it. It's all here, the water, the fire, the air, the earth, right? But if it takes a little longer, this is an honorable path. It's a hard path, but the alternatives, you know, are pretty dark. And if we want to talk scientifically, they're saying, you know, we have no idea what else is coming because of the damage that we are doing to the earth. This may be the first of many, right? So we aren't sure how we're going to emerge, but we can have the courage to say no to a world that isn't working. We can say, we don't want to take this anymore. We use our love and our anger. Let's get creative. You know, let's use this moment and our powers of beings to be aggressive, to do something about our state of affairs here on this planet and here in our own lives. And I feel this earth sky woman, that's what you're calling for, Tammy. You're being aggressive. You're saying we have to take action. And you've called us together so we can support and love everyone that wants to participate in this dialogue, this conversation, you know, and this circle of life. We aren't separate from it. And we can recreate our own education systems, our own political systems, our own economic systems, the 3 new R's of education. They're all connected. We cannot separate. And, you know, we can create systems that are whole, where we honor our body, minds, hearts, and spirits in order to be part of, come back into the circle. You've stepped away from the circle. Come back. This Earth Sky Conference, girl, you're calling us to come back to the circle.
Well, and what is a corona? It's a circle. It's a crown. It's a circle. It's a connector, you know, it's like, maybe there's the broken sacred hoop, you know, and it's like, maybe it's actually in some level that spirit is capable of, if we engage with it correctly, having it mend that sacred hoop. Yeah. Thank you, Sylvia, so much. I so agree with everything you're saying. And just really, I love the way you walk. I think that just hearing from you and having your presence, you transmit that is your medicine of actually doing and being and acting on the wisdom that's been passed on to you. Using your hands, your whole body, you know, like really doing this, and now engaging and creating a little bit of a community of elders there.
I know. I mean, I know we're supposed to be like, this is horrible, but there's so many amazing things happening, even like within my own circle. But not only that, They're seeing fish in the Venice Canal that they haven't seen in forever. The
You
air
know,
is getting cleaner by the day as we're shut down. Like,
yeah.
it's,
So
I mean,
don't you think it's true? I think part of the thing for us is that I keep hearing this. It's like, be tender and gentle with people, because the
yes,
reality is that we have already seen this coming on some level. We've had that sense of something happening. We've been preparing for this, and that's overt and conscious for us. And yet, my sense, I deeply believe every human being born at this time is born with a sacred purpose and
yes,
has the contract to be born right now, and that every human has
yes,
so much brilliance, wisdom, potential. Every single human listening right now, that you also have been in preparation and in training
yes,
for this. And
yes,
don't, if you do, we're going to all have different moments. You might be in the moment right now of freak out. You might be in the
right,
moment right now of grief, because there were some things about this old way of life that worked for you. Um,
right,
and I think it also is important, though, to recognize so it may be that for you, you're needing to sit with or be with those feelings that you've avoided. Maybe that experience of grief, maybe that experience of anger. I know for me, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning, and I have so much energy running through my body because there's so many downloads coming through right now. So I got up and I just danced. I went outside, I sang to the stars. I was just like, I gotta move my body. I just couldn't. I was just like, and so, I've got to move that energy, move those emotions through my body,
yes,
move your
yes,
body, because a lot of energy is coming
yes,
through. We are,
mm-hmm,
I have hope for our species, though. And I don't think, if we're going through a moment where we've done some of the deeper work and we now feel joyful and happy and excited, don't
yes,
feel ashamed about that. Find other people you can be joyful with, because, there's those cycles, and we don't want to suppress the joyful cycles.
no,
We want to
and
celebrate that.
yes,
And this
and
can
there
be a
are,
good time.
yes, absolutely. We, I think one of the reasons that obviously what we're going through, it's a shock to our systems, right? We're creatures of habit. Humans don't change, whether it's individually typically or as a whole group, unless we're forced to.
Right.
Right? We know that as therapists, as
Yeah.
so that's, this is forcing us to slow down. And one of the things that I've said is we need to be quarantined until we know how to handle our poop. So think about it. We don't even know as a species how to
No.
take care of our poop right.
Right.
And we haven't figured out on a big scale how to get away from the black gold that makes the
Yeah.
plastic that runs.
Right.
And excuse me, this isn't because we couldn't if we put our huge
No.
brains and big hearts. This is
Mm.
because it's being driven by the wrong things.
Yeah.
And so I'm obviously being, but I really believe that in some deep ways, the school marm in me, because I did teach school, is we need to be in timeout till we figure it really out.
And thank you. I know, to have this space is a luxury. It's a
Yes,
luxury. I keep feeling like this is a dress rehearsal for what is coming, that is, deeper change. So with that, Sylvia, we're gonna, I just want to just say, to be, in all seriousness, there are people in every different stage right now, and for some people, it's a big feeling of, I don't
huge.
know where I'm going to be able to feed my kids. I
Yes,
don't know how this economy is going to play out. And so,
right.
from that perspective too, for any of us who go through an experience of kind of fear or grief or overwhelm because of rapid change, what would you say are some practices that you find useful for yourself when you feel overwhelmed by change? What are some practices or some that you might share with others, some tools for really navigating the intensity of these times?
Yeah, so I really want to honor what you say, Tammy, because as you mentioned, as we were sharing our early life stories, we and some of our people have, in terms of our immediate communities, have been extremely blessed because we have spent so much time on the earth. And I have a huge amount of empathy and compassion for the millions of humans who haven't spent a day, maybe their whole lives on the earth, right? And the animals. I mean, everybody's
Yeah.
trapped in little boxes in many ways. So I think having empathy and compassion and recognizing that while we're celebrating in some ways, this is a very huge and scary and hard change.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to say that when we created and made our little one-room schoolhouse, and one of the things that gave us the courage to pull the children out of the mainstream and do this was because we have everything we need if we learn how to share
Mm.
and take care of what we have,
Mm.
right? So in a practical sense, in terms of tools, we don't, the spiritual practices are not for when times are easy.
Mm-hmm.
The spiritual disciplines are here for when times are hard.
Yep.
And it's okay. When I had my one-room schoolhouse, which was called the Whole Child Community School where Woods and Wisdom meet, it was in recognition of the circle of life and the fact that a whole being is body, mind, heart, and spirit, right? And I made it very clear that we were non-denominational because you don't have to have a specific spiritual or religious, framework. By spirituality, I really mean it can be many things, but the scientific recognition that we are a part of something larger than ourselves. That starts with sunshine. Okay, so one of them, and your breath, right? Air.
The basic essential things, go back to those things.
Yes.
That's how we ground ourselves.
Yes.
Yep.
When in doubt, go back to your breath.
Yep.
When in doubt, put your eyes up to the sky.
Yeah.
When in doubt, feel your feet on the earth. Give thanks. When in doubt, it's like wash the dishes and give thanks to the water. I mean, it isn't complicated. We don't have to have books. We don't have to believe in any specific deity. We can ground ourselves in any time of chaos by understanding the fact that we have a body and we are here and we can breathe, that we are loved and we can be loved. When we communicate with that water, we have that. We have what we need. And so that doesn't mean I'm not making light of, like, we have everything we need. We will have food. There's so many uncertainties in life. And it's always been that way. What modern civilization has done is made us forget that. We've forgotten how quickly life is over, and we cannot take having a life for granted. Right? Like, that's a pretty modern approach to think we might live to 70.
Yeah.
That is a modern belief system.
Right.
In the old ways, again, going back to this topic tonight in in the title, Old Knowledge for New Times. Old knowledge said if you lived through childbirth as a woman, you were lucky. Old knowledge says if you made it out back from the hunt. Old knowledge says if you have something to drink, right? Like, it really is about getting into and trusting yourself, that calming yourself through what keeps us alive, through those breaths, through being loved, random acts of kindness. There's so many beautiful, recognizing, the miracle of life. Like, that sounds, we have said that, and how many times have we heard politicians say, for the good of the children. Maybe this pandemic is here for the good of our children.
Yeah, so and children and their children. Yep.
Yes, exactly. So those are some basic ones. Other really simple ones. If you have cornmeal or flour, or tobacco within your home, you know, or anything that is a plant form, or that you can offer in gratitude, even if you live in an apartment and you have one live plant, or even if you create an altar. You know, it's a really important time to be honoring our ancestors and honoring those which came before us that have given us life, and getting to know these plants that keep us fed, right?
Mhm.
Like giving gratitude for everything we eat. That's a beautiful way of grounding into,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's something specifically we can use, for those of us that walk in these ways. Smudging your home, and
Mhm.
that doesn't mean necessarily even with sage, but working with those old, if you have incense, you know, keep your space clean, work with those plants, work with the air, give gratitude, and laugh as much as you possibly can. It is good, good medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, so important for this time. And Sylvia, the last time we were together, well, out here where I live, we'd had a gathering, and I remember we did a guided meditation where we connected with our ancestors and with the descendants, and we had a message that was given to us. And my message that was given to me was, we're not, we don't have to do this alone, and
Mm-hmm.
play more. And at the
Yes.
time I was just like, what? But that, I think, is kind of partly what you're saying too. Like, and there's something when I'm listening to you too, you're saying be that love. And my sense is that for many of us, what we're finding right now is that when we can get out of that just immediate fight or flight through going back to the
Mm-hmm.
breath, or the simple things
Mm-hmm.
like looking at the stars in the sky, or being with
Yep.
the sun, or feeling our feet on the earth, those simple things that bring us into our body. Once we can do that, when we've calmed ourselves, what can really help is for us to find a sense of purpose, and to
Yes.
find a way that we can extend ourselves beyond ourselves. And that can be a source of joy. And
Yes.
then we're not so focused on our own immediate survival needs. And then suddenly things begin to click into place and work more
Mm-hmm.
easily. You know, it feels like a
Mm-hmm.
principle of the universe, again, however you think about deity, that if we're extending ourselves beyond ourselves and in an abundant kind of space, we tend to be taken care of.
Yes, energetically, we know, you know, in all the old ways, those old sayings, whether it's Christian or whatever philosophy, or even, you know, we are energy.
Yeah.
What we give comes back.
Mhm.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
And I keep feeling for our listeners, for those of you who maybe because of where you live, it is truly too dangerous to really leave much, right?
Mhm.
Like that's a
Mhm.
real thing right now,
Mhm.
in more of our crowded spaces. I want you to understand that in your own home, you are surrounded with things from the earth. If you
Mhm.
can't actually make it outside,
Mhm.
you can look at your ceiling and pull up the pictures of the constellations, you know, like really get creative. You don't have a live plant, I bet you got a wood cabinet somewhere.
Mhm.
Tune in to the cellular essence of literally right where you are,
Yeah.
and you will be connecting to earth. And when you
Yeah.
turn that tap water on, you know, it's so important for everyone to understand you don't have to be literally outside to have gratitude and to
Yeah.
recognize that you're earth,
Yeah.
right? And that we are in gratitude. So that feels something really important for all of our listeners to.
Mhm.
And also understand that maybe you don't know about what your local resources are and how you can help, but if your internet is still working, if you have access to that, you can get on and spend some time looking at the various things in your community that maybe even in your own life you need. Do you need the food bank? Do
Mhm.
you know, do you have an animal you can't care of take care of anymore? Or do, you know, like, it's okay to say, I'm scared and I need help. And
Mm-hmm.
start looking to on a 3D, instead of becoming paralyzed in that fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take your breath, give gratitude for life, and then, like some of that old medicine, you know, badger medicine, get on it. Use your emotions to give you the courage to move forward and not stay stuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it can be anger, it can be fear, it can be whichever emotion, but to move through these times and do something,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? For
Beautiful.
yourself, and then maybe for your community. It's amazing how quickly those two become, you know, what I do for you, Tammy, you do for me, right?
Exactly. We're
What we,
reweaving those
yes,
connections very
yes,
rapidly. So
yes,
become a
it's
part of that
huge.
reweaving. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Because it's
we are
happening everywhere.
everywhere. We have to. This,
Yeah.
again, going back to this amazing moment, like, it's, this pandemic is forcing us to reevaluate what our systems really are. And the beauty in this is that now we have enough time without working that we can go, I didn't know there was a food bank right down the road.
Right.
I
Yeah.
had no idea that
Pause.
our community had meals on wheels for the elder.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea. And so you know, I mean, it's, again, it's okay to be in fear. It's okay to be scared. Work on self-calming and then get active. And then if you aren't scared and you're not in fear and you just want to be useful and, like,
Yeah.
get on it,
Uh-huh.
do it. Get
This
a
is a
hold,
really good time.
reach
Do
out
it.
to your
Yeah.
neighbors,
Yeah.
find out how you can help, get involved in that local CSA with its growing food. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if we can, again, ground into food and food security,
Yeah.
that, for anyone wondering about what to do with this time on their hands, I encourage you to just reach out, find out what's happening with local food.
Yeah.
If we
Beautiful.
put our time and our money into our local food system or our local businesses, it comes
Yep.
back 5 to 10 times.
Yep.
Right?
Beautiful.
These
Yeah.
big box stores, it never comes back into our own communities. What are we doing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thanks to what's happening now, and people like you, Tammy, I mean, that are saying, let's see it, let's rise up into it, let's help each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you so much. That's just such good insight to navigate, and I so appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom and your words and your love. And so for everybody out there, just just drink that in, and we really are. I think we really are waking up, and there are difficulties in all of this. And I think what I most love about what you're saying is the simplicity of it, is the simplicity of get your hands dirty, connect to the food systems. And when you do, I think you're going to start feeling empowered in a vital, vital way. Touching the earth, doing that makes us feel happier. They've done lots of studies.
Yes.
And doing it with other people, it can feel intimate and
Mhm.
connected. It's going to wake up the ancestors inside of you who have lots to share with you. So
Mhm.
Sylvia, thank you
Mhm.
so much for your wisdom, and you have a beautiful night. And as always, just thanks for being the beautiful star sister and earth mama that you are.
Thank you. Thank all our listeners. We're honored that you have tuned in, and I believe on Tammy's site, she's giving access to how to communicate with her and each other. If you want to continue this conversation, I know
Absolutely.
that for myself and Tammy, we know why we're here in this physical body.
Yeah.
And it is about community. And I want to encourage everyone to know, you are not alone.
Yeah.
None of us are.
No.
And when you are feeling that loneliness or that fear, just reach out and grab an arm of a chair.
Yeah.
There's your
Yeah.
Mama Earth, and she's
There's your
got you.
mama. She's good. There she is. And just that's
Right?
right. And feel the weight of the gravity and your feet on the floor, and she's got you.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Perfect.
Mhm.
So, and like you said, Sylvia, this is uploaded to YouTube probably by the time you see it. So if you do want to send any comments or just share where you're at with what's going on for you with your food system and all of that, then please do share with us. We would love to know where you're at. So
Yeah, for
great.
all the listeners out there. And we're excited for everyone who can join us on Saturday, and
Yeah.
the Earth Sky Woman the coming together of so much knowledge. And don't forget, if you can, to look up in the sky too. Feel that sunshine. I really want to honor the work Tammy does with helping us remember we are Earth and we are sky.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much, Sylvia.
Thank you so much, Tammy.
Have a beautiful night.
I hope. And talk we
Oh.
say.